I think I forgot my notes, so we're just going to go rogue today. So today is the first day of VBS, and it's combined with worship, so it's a little bit different from how we normally do worship. So before I get to the scripture reading, I want to share with y'all something that is an interesting concept in the art world, and you might have heard of it before. It's this concept that it goes something like this. Before you can break the rules, you have to learn the rules first. Or you have to learn the rules before you can break the rules. Have y'all ever heard that before? Yes. Okay. So it's a concept that maybe not every artist buys into, but many do. And it's this concept that talks about that if you're learning how to paint or draw or to create art, that you have to learn the fundamentals first, that you have to learn how to draw or paint or create something realistically before you start adventuring into the abstract. And if you think about the most famous abstract artists, I have a couple for you on the front of your bulletin. Sometimes when you see some of their early work or just some of their more realistic drawings and paintings, it's almost a shock to the system because they're so well known for the abstract things that it's like, oh, geez, I didn't realize that person could paint like that. And so you'll see on your bulletin you have the top two are Picasso. One is his self-portrait, and the other is his famous painting that was a political protest against the Nazis. And the other one is Van Gogh, and it's just a drawing that he did, and then his famous Starry Night. And so these were artists who really learned how to be very fine and very precise, and then they kind of ventured out into something a little bit different. And I have a lot of artist friends, and even an artist in my family. My cousin is a very accomplished artist. And so I called them, some of my friends, some of my peeps this week to kind of ask what they thought about this theory that you have to learn the rules before you can break the rules. And my cousin told me something really interesting. He said that the way he thinks about it is that when you're a child and you're learning how to draw, you draw things that are familiar to you. So, maybe you draw a tree or a house when you're a child, and maybe you draw your mom, and she looks something like this, right? But these are actually obviously symbols of those things that are familiar to you. They're not realistic depictions of what exactly a tree and a house and a mom looks like. And so at some point, as your brain starts developing, you start to realize that these are symbols, that it doesn't look exactly like those things that you're trying to draw. And then some people decide that they want to go a little bit further and maybe learn how to make the shapes and the lines and the pictures that look a little bit more realistic. And so, a child might learn, kind of start drawing a face and make a round circle for the face and make, some eyes like that, and then maybe a nose and a mouth like that, okay? And then hair, okay. And so this is like developing a little bit further. But then when you start trying to learn how to draw more realistically, you learn that not to draw symbols of the things that you're trying to draw, but instead to actually try to draw more realistically. So you try to create some kind of more realistic representation of, eyes. And maybe if you're drawing a nose, maybe you actually are looking at a person and you don't see every single line of the nose. You just see a few shadows or something. And you maybe don't see every line of the lips, but you just see if you're looking at a person's face, you don't necessarily see every single line. And so then you start, and the face isn't round, and so you start to learn how to draw a little bit more realistically, and then as you practice and practice and practice, you draw what you see as well as you can. And I used to have an art teacher that used to say, draw what you see, draw what you see, not what you don't see. So if you're looking at a person and they're standing like this, you don't see both feet. You just draw what you see, not what you don't see. Or if you're looking at a table, maybe you don't see all four legs. So don't draw all four legs if you don't see them. And then, what my cousin said that I thought was so interesting is that once you start to perfect that drawing what you see and master those skills, then you can learn to draw things that you can't see. And I think that's exactly what Picasso was doing, or what he's famous for. So Picasso was drawing, for example, multiple sides of someone's face all at one time that you wouldn't actually see, and he was trying to give a certain message with his drawings and paintings. They're drawing things that you can't capture in a picture or a photograph. And the reason I think that's so interesting is that the Bible is full of these word pictures. The Bible is full of these pictures that have been painted by artists throughout time. And so today we're going to look at the first creation story in Genesis, which is located in Genesis 1. And I'm going to read it kind of slowly, and you can either listen or follow along, just whichever way you prefer. But it's on page 1 of your Bible. And it's not a long passage, but it's long enough to where I'm going to break it up. So that we're going to read it in sections. And as I'm reading, I'm going to ask you to actively listen, and as you're actively listening, see what words or phrases pop up for you. See if there's anything that sticks out, either as interesting or something you haven't noticed before, or maybe something you have noticed before but perhaps it's speaking to you in a different way than you've experienced before. And also try to think of this not so much as a realistic photograph, but as a painting, and see what comes up. Okay. So we'll start with Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness God called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. I must pause there. So anything come up who's going to be the first person to speak? Anything come up that was sticking out to you for some reason in that section?
the waters of the deep.
Do you want to say more? Or that's all you want to say? The waters of the deep. Anything else?
I'm thinking I couldn't draw that.
You couldn't draw it.
No, you can't draw it because it's all mixed up together.
Yeah, yeah. And in the beginning, yeah.
God is the source of everything.
God is the source of everything. Yeah. Good.
The formless void was here.
And his name is Frank.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to keep going. And God said, "Let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water." So God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. God called the expanse sky. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let dry ground appear." And it was so. God called the dry ground land, and the gathered waters God called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetation, plants bearing seeds according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit with seed in it according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. What else?
I think about non-GMO seeds and plants.
Non-GMO seeds and plants. Yeah. What else? So how does God create? Not with a magic wand, but how it, like, is it a command?
He says, God said, and it was so.
Uh-huh.
In metaphysics.
God said what? Let there be. Is it a command? Not really. It's not a command. So how does that speak to you? God speaking is the creating, and it's not a command necessarily. What does that mean?
He's an artist.
God's an artist. Yeah. What else? Should we keep going?
When, it depends on who says "let there be," and when God says it, I think it's got more force than. And just, it's like when a three-star general says, "Stand at attention," and you're a private. Pretty much, let you stand at attention. What are you going to do? God is in charge. One thing about, to me, the whole creation thing, but these particular verses seem to me, and it's significant for it, to be an attempt by the folks that are writing to understand what the world is around them and describe it.
Mm-hmm. It's an attempt to understand what the world is around them. Yeah. Also who God is. Also maybe who they are in relation to God. Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about we talk about God said, and in John it says in the beginning was the Word. So God is a word, God is an action.
That's great. I like that. Y'all know what he's talking about in the Gospel of John, John 1:1. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's keep going. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them serve as signs to mark seasons and days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth." And it was so. God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. God also made the stars. God set them in the expanse of the sky to give light on the earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness. And God saw that it was good. and there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. Anything there?
It's really hard to reconcile what we know is science today is how this could be.
Mm-hmm. Right. And in fact, because this is page 1 of the Bible, maybe it's the thing that people might read first and decide, well, that's not true. Right? Right? So what do you think about that?
I think it's a poetic way of telling the story of creation. It's not a scientific way of telling it. It's just, a poetic way of telling. That way they understand that God created the world at the time when they thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they see it. And when you see, when we talk about God being an artist, I think that's exactly, for me, this is like describing exactly maybe a picture, an art picture, and that's what is in the mind of this person that is writing, like a poem. So it's
Like a
just
poem,
describing it like
yeah.
that, like.
Yeah.
And so when this is all surface and arts and poetry and writer, and then when you think about what little we know but more today about physics and science, you think about I see a ripple, the water rippling, God said it was so, and so all this stuff on the surface happened, but underneath all these other things are happening that we know about more today than they did when this was written.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
I was gonna say the same thing, they didn't have the benefit of quantum physics or the Big Bang Theory.
Right.
What I liked about it is that he gave the sun and the moon as signs to mark seasons, days, and years. And that reminds me that every morning when the sun comes up, it's God's promise and God's care in his creation. So daily reminder that God is our creator.
The sun and the moon are signs. I'm repeating just so people know that the sun and the moon are signs, and that every day when we wake up, it's a daily reminder of God's care. Is that what you said? Yeah, I like that.
This is called the creation myth, and every world religion and every ethnic group has a creation myth. They're not at all the same, but they all explain how things came to be.
Can you like briefly mention a few creation myths?
I know the Native Americans have some very vivid creation myths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't remember the details, but I just remember they all have actors doing something to bring about creation.
Yeah.
And
Do-
a lot of them are animals. I mean, ravens go and get the sun and bring it down to earth and all. Lots
What
of-
about, so Genesis 1 is a creation myth. Is there anywhere else? Perhaps in Genesis?
Genesis 2.
That's right. Thank you. Genesis 2, if you keep reading past page 1, there's a second creation account. A lot of people mistake that for a continuation, but if you look at it, I don't know that we'll have time to do this today. Maybe we will, I'm not sure. But if you look at Genesis 1 and you kind of list out what exactly is happening in Genesis 1, the order of creation, it's very different than Genesis 2. The scholars tell us that they were written about 500 years apart, Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. Actually, Genesis 2, I think they say, is written first, and from different parts of the Middle East. So,
One thing I would add is, and I think this is correct, I don't remember which one version it is, but one of them borrows heavily from Babylonian creation myth after the period when the people, children of Israel had been in exile.
yeah, how'd you know that? Were you behind my pulpit looking at my books? So
Goes to Sunday school.
So I have this is a book called Old Testament Parallels. It's actually, it's a bit of a boring book if you don't know what you're looking at. But in this book, one of the Old Testament parallels that you can find is called the Enuma Elish. It's a creation myth of the Babylonians. And I actually don't remember in detail, but what I remember is that in the Enuma Elish, it was a political statement that was set up for the god Marduk to be like the highest god of all gods. And the thundering herd is here. and it talks about how God created, the earth was created out of violence. The gods were fighting. And one of the, I think gods or demigods was ripped apart to create humankind. And the reason that humankind was created in that creation myth was for slavery, so that humankind could serve the gods. And a lot of scholars think that Genesis 1 might be a response to that Babylonian creation myth, which says actually God is the only God, and God created the world out of love. And God created humankind for a different purpose, not for slavery. We'll get to that. We'll get to the purpose here in a minute. Did you want to say anything else about that? No? Okay. All right, let's keep going. Am I on verse 20? Yes. And God said, "Let the water teem with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky." So God created the great creatures of the sea, and every living and moving thing with which the water teems, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds increase on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. Anything there? I forgot to ask, why do y'all think that there's Genesis 1 and Genesis 2? Like, what purpose? Why do we have two, do you think?
Different times, different people.
Yeah, for sure. But why do you think they were both included? I heard talking, but I didn't pick out an answer. Huh? To confuse people.
Well, going back to your analogy of the artist on how you learn to draw and so on, if you take 5 different kids' depiction of a house, it's going to look very different.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what we have here, and it looks nothing like what a photographic subject would look like.
Right. Yeah. And one way to kind of look at it in a very simple, oversimplified way is in Genesis 1, where is God while God is doing the creating?
In the void?
Yeah. I mean, God is kind of like the master orchestrator, right? And in Genesis 2, we haven't read it yet, so I won't put you on the spot, but God's actually in the garden, walking around, talking with Adam and Eve. And so you have 2 different views of God, one where God is sort of transcendent and all-powerful and all-knowing, and one where God is immanent and with you, or with us, right? And so which one is true? Yeah, they're both true. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going. Am I in verse 24?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that move along the ground according to their kinds. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image. In our likeness, let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in God's own image. In the image of God, God created him. Male and female, God created them. Anything there?
God is plural in 1 verse 26. Let
Yeah.
us make man our.
God is plural, yeah. In that particular verse, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me that there is this sequence of events that may be argued as a person God that supports evolution. The birds and the seeds all came first. If we look at the evolutionary scale, we were kind of the last ones.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
But I think it's also interesting that livestock were created, which implies domesticated animals before there was man.
Mm-hmm.
So why would there be a need for animals like that if there was no one there to reap the benefit of them?
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. It's just like, why would you create cattle, basically, before you create man?
Because you get the baby room ready before the baby comes.
Ah, okay. I'll buy that.
And because God knows from the beginning what the end is.
A lot of people think that cows and people were created on different days, but actually it's the same day in this particular account, which is kind of interesting. Okay, let's keep going.
So when
Yeah.
we get back to that God being plural,
Uh-huh.
is that the first reference to the Trinity? God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit? Is that what that means to say God did this in our image? Is
So-
it referring to the triune God?
Yes and no. So, no, because the author didn't know what the Trinity was, right?
Right.
But yes, because we do.
So is the plural in the original
What's the Greek
language
word?
of the
Hebrew.
Bible or not?
Yeah, it's plural. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the Hebrew word for our is also plural.
Yes. Masculine plural. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. And another reference to the Trinity is when the wind from God swept over the waters. The wind is a parallel in that Enuma Elish story. The wind is used for creation in Enuma Elish as well. But the wind from God in the Hebrew is the ruach, which is also the spirit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we do have some Trinity ideas going on here in Genesis 1.
Is the, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask this.
No, no.
Is the word for spirit in Hebrew is a male too, or is a female? Because when we talk about Sophia in the New Testament,
I think it's neutral.
is okay. It's a
I
female.
think. Somebody Google that. I think it's neutral. Genesis 1 is by far not the oldest thing that we have in the Bible. We think that the oldest written text in the Bible is Exodus 15. So that's kind of interesting. It's not even in Genesis. All right, let's keep going. What time is it? Really? Okay, let's go fast. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food, and to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of the air and all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has the breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw all that God had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their vast array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work that God had been doing. So on the seventh day, God rested from all God's work. And God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it, God rested from all the work of creating that God had done. Anything there?
It kind of sounds like they're the same. I mean, they blend perfectly. Or haven't been too. Can you understand what I'm saying? It just rolls right in. We just went into the second one, right?
Oh, well, that's just how they numbered it. So the end of the first creation account ends at 2:3.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. That's confusing, I know.
All right.
One of the things that it makes me think of is we're given a great gift and we kind of abused it.
Oh, yeah.
Environment.
Yeah.
And all of the things that we were given by God.
Right. And there's that question that came up earlier about why did God create these things when there wasn't humans there? And one of the answers is maybe God delighted in those things just in and of themselves, right?
It just says subdue it.
Subdue it, yeah. So what do you take of that?
It's a confusing word that can be used to the benefit of whoever wants it to say whatever they want it to say.
Yeah, rule, here, it says rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every creature. What does rule over mean, do you think?
That you're above them and you can do whatever you want. I mean, that's kind of how it sounds. You know?
It sounds like you can just do whatever you want, right? Yeah. Yeah. But-
It's caretaker.
So,
Careful would have been,
Right. It is confusing. And what does Jesus, the ultimate ruler, show us about how to rule? Yeah.
Be a servant.
To be a servant leader. Yeah. Yeah. So Jesus definitely comes in and fills out for us some more explanation. So I'm sorry that went quicker than I anticipated. And I wish we'd had more time, but you'll just have to come back for more days of EBS. So real quick, we've got a special song for you. This is a song by another word artist named David Gambrell. And Larry and Sapphire are going to come up and help sing this song. Or sing, they're going to help, they are going to sing it. And while they're getting set up, I'm going to just tell you something that I noticed this morning when I was looking at it. So David wrote this song based on Genesis 1, and he gave us the sheet music and said that he was happy for us to play this song today. And I realized the song has an interesting structure, and I realized what he did. There's 6 verses you'll hear. And he groups the first 3 and the second 3. And in between, he puts a chorus. And I know David, so I was like, why did he do that? Because he has a reason for everything he does. And I realized that the first 3 verses, or the first 3 verses of the song, but the first 3 days of creation are the shaping days. And the second 3 verses, which are the 4, 5, and 6 days of creation, are the filling days of creation. And then he's got choruses in between, and then he's got a final, I don't know if you would call it a verse or not, but the final one is the 7th day of creation. And so it's really an interesting and beautiful song. and we just didn't quite get to it. But as you're saying it, think about the different pronouns and how they change the meaning, and how we're, all of us, men and women, created in God's image, and also how we've been given dominion over the earth and what that means.
Oh, and their emotions.
Oh, and their emotions.
And motions. May we go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good. Return no one evil for evil, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all people, tend God's creation, love and serve the Lord, rejoicing in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.